All right. I'm going to present a lot of information, and hopefully you have seen a lot of my video series. Two very important series to watch to understand what I'm going to present here. One entitled EPHRAIM and MANASSEH USA UK. You watch that, you're going to get familiar with Genesis chapter 48 and 49 that is describing the leader of northern Israel, the leader of the northern 10 tribes, the unicorns. You're going to see that Ephraim has Egyptian royal descendancy. And then once you begin to understand that Ephraim is further identified with the founders of this country, the English, and then you can begin to understand why we have on the back of our dollar bill, within their symbols, the Egyptian pyramid, and then of course the Washington Monument is an obelisk, the phallus of the sun god, Ra. So all of that should not be hard to understand. But what is probably making it more difficult to understand is the way that they're pulling the wool over everyone's eyes. By the self-exposure of themselves and pointing the very finger at themselves, they feel that they can separate themselves from what and truly who they are. What we're soon and so fast finding out. So I hope to present to you the deeper, even the deepest understanding of what Revelation chapter 12, this woman in travail, Israel, as she is going to the moon, as it describes in Rev.12, and what she is planning to birth. And as we compare it to Zechariah 5, and then this new information, the understanding of these two women that bear this ephah, that bear this vessel of wickedness, that is connected further to the wheat, that you see all of these semblages, or will see all of these semblages manifest, even connected to that vulture we've already talked about. So as they are going to this land, it's all about a birthing moment, and I want you to understand fully what the plan is and what they're seeking to birth, and it's not a pretty thing. Let's just simply go ahead and look at all of these semblages, and I want you to know without a doubt that every last one of them are associated with birth or birthing. Every last one of them is about the same thing, just either on a different conditional perspective depending on which time this information is being conveyed and to who it's being conveyed and from where this information is coming from. But once you can unify these symbols under their singular agenda or ideologies, it tells you the same fluid story of information, all about the birth, all about this birth, all about the birth. Once again, the inverted triangle is about the birth. And then we have the other triangle, the one that faces upward. These simply, at their purest forms, represent polarities, male and female energies, but they have many other variable understandings that are going to keep on connecting further as we understand this. All about birth. And this is what you're really going to begin to see and understand when we understand who this Egyptian goddess Nekhbet is, which is going to fulfill who these two ladies are in Zechariah 5 that have these great wings of a stork that are associated with childbirth, that are associated with the protection of royal descendancies, which we see will connect fully with the understanding of Zechariah 5, this connection of the ephah also being in relation to a measure of grain in which they believe themselves to be the true wheat that are being brought to this field of dreams that we know now is the land of Shinar, the shining one, the moon. And it's even outlined in REV.12. It says the moon under her feet. Now, as we see here, this depiction of Ishtar that you should already be absolutely familiar with, that is going to be connected further to the state of Israel itself. And then we connect that further to Ezekiel chapter 19, which even describes for us these two lions which she has seduced and conquered and then trained further to destroy and kill men. So this perspective we're going to begin to understand in greater detail as it relates to Revelation chapter 12, as Israel being depicted as this woman in symbolage of Ishtar, and then Nekbet and Wadjet, which will be the symbolage of the two ladies that bear her up, that are both symbolized as the wings of a great eagle, which we'll see will translate successfully back to vulture. And then at the same time, the symbolages of these two ladies having the wings of a stork, per Zechariah 5, describe them in their essence of childbearing and child protection, just like we see that the stork is still set outside of American homes to this day as the symbol for the bearing and the protection of the newly born. But we're going to understand what this newly born in all reality is of their God being born into this material realm. And that would be none other than the serpent. And that would also be known as the Nahesh, or in other words, Enki. Could be further associated with Osiris, further associated with Horus, or aka Marduk. You will see that there is an overlapping flow of information that fulfill the figurative depictions of these deities as one singular agenda just being played out over time through different mythologies. And that's where the confusion comes in, why so many people are thrown off the track in their understanding. Okay, so you got to be able to see all things at once and recognize no separation in essence between the flow of this information, because it originates from one singular destination, of which I call the predeterminate condition. If you don't understand what the predeterminate condition is, basically for our reality, it takes place from the Garden of Eden, dependent upon that action of mankind accepting that temptation for the serpent, the apple, and then now the reality that we dwell in is a product of that. So as we can see, this symbolage is all about birthing. Not only is it about the birthing, but it's revealing in the way that the birthing will be achieved by the manipulation of what you see here, known as the star tetrahedron. But also at the same time, you're looking at a singular cell, and you're looking at the geometry for an atom. And within this is their understanding of how to crack the code and the very dominion of Adam himself to bring about this this eater, if you will, that will fulfill what the book of Judges chapter 14 verse 14 declares in Samson's riddle describing the Ouroboros. And this Ouroboros symbol that you see here is really just another semblance for this exact same Shin ring that relates further back to their conveyance of infinity, immortality, eternity. The very same thing that you see that the Ouroboros symbol represents, and then it's going to be the very same thing that we see depicted in Nekbet's talons here. The very same thing, which will unify us further in the understanding from Zechariah 5, the two women bearing like the stork, which will be Nekbet and Wadjet of the Egyptian mythology. And then we're going to understand how Israel being termed as the woman, aka Ishtar, basically the vehicle for bearing the great work or the great labor of inducing their god Enki into this realm. We'll see that it'll all come together if you just hear me out. So once again, all about birthing. And once again, this symbol all about birthing. This is a world age. Okay, basically it's the ending of this world age that we're in right now, and it's also known as the ending of the 13th Baktun. The 13th Baktun is going to aka the pale horse, who death and hell is his rider. We'll see that Dan is going to connect us back to an ancient Kutha god by the name of Nergal. And Nergal in Mesopotamia is known as the god of death. This Nergal will be none other than the pale horse of Revelation, who death is his rider. And I'm going to be prepared to lay all this out to where there's no way to refute it. The only thing that I'm hoping is that those that have not followed these videos sincerely or seriously are going to be able to keep up. So there we have the Ouroboros, and within this astronomical alignment of which we're in currently right now itself, I want you to see that this Milky Way, among many things depicted as an open serpent's mouth at the dark rift central location, we also see it depicted as the cosmic womb, which will fulfill exactly what Revelation 12 is talking about, even portrayed astronomically within their astrology, within their zodiac, describing this woman in travail. It's all the same thing. So Rev.12 is all about that. All right. Now, at this point, and I've got some unique ways to show this to you guys. And as always, most of the time my videos build up to an even more unique understanding as they move forward. So a lot of times they even produce information that I'm not even aware is about to happen, in connections that for all intent and purposes should be respected for what they are. And these are things that, if you can understand, will completely destroy this coming strong delusion, of which is already being prepared right now by the diversion of the truth movement on YouTube, by these agents who are all posing to be something they're not, and at the same time steering you away from something that you should truly understand. So I'd like to just simply read just real fast, just to familiarize yourself with the topics of these themes here right out of Revelation, and you can see for yourself what we're going to talk about. Chapter 12, Revelation. The woman, Israel, the woman clothed with the sun, and the man-child. Now we know that Jesus Christ does not return as a man, and simply right there we can expose their lie. He returns in his spirit glory over and over and over again. This being here is none other than the Antichrist, who you know is predicted to fulfill a material form, because his number is what? Guess what? 666, which is what? The number of a man, which is the atomic equational understanding of the carbon atom: 6 electrons, 6 protons, and 6 neutrons. So this is telling you from Revelation chapter 13 that this being, and even false Israel, their great work is to produce him into this material form by, in essence, cracking the code of the very dust of the earth in so many variable understandings of ways, because mankind himself was created from the dust of the earth. So this dust of the earth represents the particle form scientifically known as the atom, which associates itself with the number of the beast that fulfills itself as the number of man, 666. So that's how this man-child is being produced by Israel, which is in semblance of northern Israel, the 10 horns, the northern 10 tribes, which are fallen, which are further associated with the lands of Samaria, of which you can find the well of Jacob in, of which you can further equate now to that abyss that has been talked about in so many of my video series. And we can see that Jesus Christ speaks out against this abysmal well of knowledge and his dealing with the woman of Samaria at the well. Check it out. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet. All right, so that is depicting this woman Israel in semblance simultaneously of both the sun and the moon, and even describes her feet being planted on the very moon. That'll be the fulfillment of Zechariah 5 that describes that base that should be established in the land of Shinar. That's the moon. And she being with child cried, travailing in birth, pained to be delivered. Now this travailing in birth is going to be experienced by us, and has been, by all of this destruction that you see, by all these storms and these earthquakes and these cataclysms and all this bad stuff that's been going on, is a reflection of this woman in travail as she is now about to reach this moment of the birthing of this new world order. And otherwise, it's King Enki. So, as I've told you before, this is a major editing job that's been performed right here in Revelation. They have successfully mixed ancient scripture concerning the original birth of Christ into his material form through his parents, Mary and Joseph, which you should be so familiar of. And then, of course, the serpent trying to block and destroy this coming birth of the Messiah, who is known as Jesus Christ. They have mixed this all upon this understanding of this later birthing of their God into material form to confuse. I've got a quick train coming, just give me a moment. And you can kind of see, well, first simply you should just understand that we know that this great dragon, the serpent, was already cast out of heaven in the beginning, in Genesis. It's already happened. The serpent is there, the serpent offers the apple, the world is already fallen, so to say, because of that. They're trying to team this up now in Revelation as something that is happening now, when in reality it's an overlay of ancient scripture as it concerns the original fall of Lucifer and his planned attempt to stop the emergence of Jesus in this world in material form, of which you know he was unsuccessful. So if you just understand that and can see where the folly of the scripture that lies before your eyes here from verse 7 to 10 being shown to you is something that takes place now, then you're all the better for it. But it's a whole nother video series if I was to just simply track down all the scripture and show you how all that relates. But you should simply be able to understand that by what I told you so far. So now, this is where we get this woman once again in travail, this Israel that's going to the moon to produce this being. And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. Now, if we move forward to verse 14, listen closely. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness. Now that's the moon, that's the land of Shinar, into her place, into her base, where she is nourished for a time, and times, and half a time, from the face of the serpent. Now that's the folly of this editing that has been produced from the King James. This has got more things wrong with it in so many ways than it is right, but a river does run through it, the water line does run through it, and the Bible is both light and dark, good and evil, and we need to be able to correctly divide the word. So you can see that the same thing is played out here, and the woman fled into the wilderness. There's the feeding, and then once again a retelling of it being lifted up now, on these two wings of a great eagle. Directly from what we know of in Zechariah. Now I'm about to speed up this presentation here. Just hold your horses. This is where we're going to get the connection with what is being termed an eagle in Revelation. You will see is translated further in Hebrew back to vulture. And we've already understood that as the connection from Isaiah chapter 34. Isaiah 34, which is dealing with this Iraqi dinar. Everything you see on here is displayed in Isaiah chapter 34. And there's the assemblage for our Ishtar at the top of the royal arch in connection with the Sumerian god, further displayed from Utu, Shemesh, Marduk, right on down to Enki. And right at the top is the assemblage for the owl. And we know that Ishtar is further connected once again with the owls. Okay? So now I want you to see where we're going to begin to explore the connection with the two women that are being displayed in chapter 5. Okay? Which you should put into perspective that this judgment has already been cast, known as this flying roll. And this is where you get the fractal completion of the connection of the term rock and roll. Because the flying roll is going to be faked as this rock, this millstone. Okay? This millstone, as I said, is being made to look like it's asteroids or meteors, which it's not. It's going to be exactly as it's depicted with this flying roll measurement, which depicts it as cylindrical like a rocket, that is already shown on my drawings. Okay, so notice that in Zechariah that the judgment is taking place just like we see in all the other displays, and then this remnant is lifted up, and then the remnant is reflective in reality of the tares. These ones who think they're the true wheat in reality are the tares that are being lifted up. And if you understand the parable of the wheat and tares by Jesus Christ, you'll see that there are two fires. The first one is the one of Revelation chapter 13, verse 13, that is brought about by the 10 horns under the order of Satan. In other words, the connection to the devil. And then the second fire we see is in depiction of these real tares that are finally being rid, these true iniquity workers, the sons of perdition that are truly being rid off the earth. But the burning that takes place for them is taking place within this lake of fire, as you see that when Jesus returns, simply he gathers the sons of perdition up and then casts them into the lake of fire. Not cast the lake of fire upon them like we see in Revelation chapter 13, verse 13. They're going to bring a fire upon all the earth. Well, Jesus Christ, in reality, brings the fire only to these iniquity workers, the sons of perdition. And it's not necessarily a fire that he has given them by his own will. It's a fire that they brought upon themselves by the rejection of the true will and design of the Creator. So let's look at chapter 5. They've already brought the destruction of the flying roll, aka the millstone, the rock and roll. And then now we see that this ephah, in other words, this basket, is being lifted up. The basket is in representation, as I've already shown, for a measure of dry wheat. And we see that there is also a wickedness that's thrown in the midst of it. That wickedness is what you saw in Revelation chapter 12, what the woman is in travail with. And then you saw that it's going to be this king that rules with a rod of iron, who so many people mistranslate as Jesus Christ. Then it says, then lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, there came out two women. This is where we're going to see the connections with Nekbet and Wadjet. And the wind was in their wings, for they had wings like the wings of a stork, and they lifted up the ephah between the earth and heaven. And you should all know the rest. Then I said to the angel that talked with me, whither do these bear the ephah? And he said unto me, to build it in a house in the land of Shinar, and it shall be established and set there upon her own base, her own moon base. And you know that's true from Rev 12, because the woman's feet is upon the moon. Now that symbolage is of the sign of Virgo. Further, if you want to explore that, you can Google that and see how Virgo connects directly to Ishtar. So guys, basically, this was more of a preparation that I've done on this video to kind of put all of this information in perspective of how you're going to see it and what it's going to connect to. I think that I'm going to keep this video short and come back with another that will basically just delve right in to the information that I've got prepared to show you here, along with other books and depictions of symbols from ancient Egypt, connections to ancient Samaria, right on down here to the Bible. So maybe before I do that, I'll close with this video here and just going to show you a little further how Ishtar is relating to childbirth. And now that I think about it, I'd like to connect it here to Hosea, which is going to connect back further to Ecclesiastes. And you'll understand what I mean when I read this to you, which is all about birth, what they're birthing, and you'll see that the writer of Ecclesiastes here is going to portray correctly the very same thing that Zechariah is, that there is wickedness accompanying Israel up to the moon. This wickedness that is to be birthed will be known as the Antichrist. Okay, and you're going to see that, and I'm going to show you that before we get out of this video here. So, let me put this in perspective with childbirth and a way that we need to understand even Nekhbet and Ishtar, Hathor, Isis, Kali, basically you name it. All of these fertility and even death goddesses, because generally these goddesses are both the goddess of death and fertility simultaneously. You're going to see that they all have the same symbolage of the cow. And it's where we get the expression holy cows from. The cows are going to be our women. The cows are going to be where we get the connection from these ancient Sumerian gods associated with the Anunnaki, who are symbolized with the bull. So as we know from Genesis chapter 6, where we get this connection of the understanding of the philosophy of the sacred feminine, which you saw depicted to you with the symbolage of Baphomet, we're going to see that the sons of God take unto themselves all the daughters of men of which they thought were fair. It will be these daughters of men who become these cows. And it's what's going to kind of unify an understanding further in Hosea, where Hosea is continually associating Ephraim with these heifers. In other words, these cows. Now this cow connection will go between Ishtar and it will go between Nekhbet seamlessly. But you just have to listen further to understand how these symbolages overlay each other. Let me just simply read this right here. Ephraim compared to the heifers. Hosea chapter 4 verse 16. For Israel slideth back as a backsliding heifer. Now the Lord, Enki, will feed them in a large place. Now you know that is Shinar, the moon. That's fulfillment of where we saw in Revelation chapter 12. And it says in Hosea chapter 10 verse 11, and Ephraim is as an heifer that is taught and loveth to tread out the corn. Now you know that the corn, if you've been watching my videos, is also translated as wheat or grain. And that's what's going to connect us further to this division of the wheat and the tares. Okay, so Ephraim, this leader of northern Israel, is being compared once again to its mother in association with Ishtar, which you see now is being successfully depicted by another seer, Hosea, as a cow, as a heifer. And what I'm trying to tell you is that this all originates from the sons of God taking the daughters of men, as their women for the birthing vehicles for these Nephilim. In other words, the golden calves. He depicts this Assyrian in connection with the golden calf, and that you should further understand the connection that Ra is going to have with the golden calf in his connection to Hathor, who is this cow, the great cow mother, who will connect to Nekhbet, this vulture, as the great white cow. And then this great white cow will connect to the great white throne, the great white crown. As I told you, that great white stone that is associated with the Philosopher's Stone, that was that manna that the Israelites were given to eat by Moses, that was further connected to the caduceus, that serpent wisdom that we've already shown so well. So in other words, Israel is completely enveloped in this doctrine that comes to us from the days of Genesis, that is associated with these fallen sons of God taking unto themselves the daughters of men to produce them as the birthing vehicles that become the root origin of these many goddesses that are associated with fertility and simultaneously death, that are all symbolized with the cow. Now, this will connect us further with this Aryan understanding that should connect you back to Mesoamerica, basically the pyramids of Mexico that are associated with that serpent god Quetzalcoatl, who is depicted as a tall, Caucasian, light-skinned man. And then this will be the very same depiction of the Antichrist, who we see depicted as the Assyrian, that is further connected with the Aryans, or the kings of the Medes, which you should associate with Aryan kings. Now, guys, this is the deepest of the deepest of all the hidden mysteries that are going to be all a part of the strong delusion that they seek to foist upon you, that already now they're having to come out of their hiding places and begin to basically reveal what the true nature of their agenda is, because they can no longer hide behind their fake images of Christianity that they have created for themselves. They want you to believe, most of these channels, that they are all about Jesus Christ, but they're really not. They believe in a different Messiah, and it's the very same reasons why they reject Jesus that the Jews rejected Jesus. And then still to this day, these very same Jews that are connected with northern Israel are looking for the coming of their Messiah, known as the Nahesh, that we see in Revelation chapter 9, associated with the locust, aka Dan, is known as the destroyer. And Jesus even reveals where this destroyer is going to come from, the broad way associated with this path of destruction, which is in symbolage for the sacrifice of New York City, associated with the broad way of New York City, that will be the center where this millstone will land off the East Coast, the 13 colonies, to eventually create the blood sacrifice to bring this being in esoterically, metaphysically, philosophically, and finally materially into our dominion, just like it's quoted in Revelation chapter 12. Okay, so now I want to show you something that is going to, I've got to show you a couple things here real quick, but I think the best thing for me to do is to show you this right now. I hope I've got the right page marked. Yes, give me one moment. Now, in taking into perspective the goddess Hathor, which we're going to talk about much more in the next video that follows this, I want you to just simply view this picture with Hathor right here where I'm pointing. I'd like to go ahead and read this, and you will see some connections that are going to connect our Hathor further to Ishtar, further to REV.12, that's going to connect to the sacred feminine in this ideology and the philosophy of the cow and where it comes from. It says here, Hathor, lady of the sycamore, recognizable by her headdress of a sun disk between cow's horns, and a deity representing one of the nomes or regions of Egypt. Now, at this point, just simply looking at this depiction of Hathor, you can see the representation of what is being called the cow horns, and then you can see the representation of this sun disk, which is going to be in further representation of the very same Eye of Ra that you see on this great seal of the United States, which will be further in representation with this Lord of the Earth known as Enki, which is further related to his father Anu, which would be successfully translated as Lucifer. So as we go back here, this is where it's going to get pretty interesting. This is going to be what's known as a Venus figurine. And you will see that Ishtar herself is associated with Venus. And Venus usually is associated with Lucifer, the light bearer, which is associated with this original plan to tempt the daughters of man, to produce them as the birthing cows for the Nephilim, which would eventually produce the descendancies of these serpent kings of Babylon, Assyria, Egypt, and eventually become known as the Elites or the Illuminated, that are all associated with northern Israel, the 10 horns, further depicted as unicorns. So now you look at ancient depictions of women, and these women are depictions of these ancient cows. The very same depiction of these heifers, the very same thing that you see, their history, their story, their mythology from these daughters of man from the days of Genesis 6 have evolved over time and been depicted in places as Babylon, Egypt, and Assyria as these goddesses, these sacred cow birthing goddesses. And what you're looking at is simply called a Venus figurine. And these Venus figurines are how they see and have seen our women. And this is where our women became associated with these great, huge birthing cows, just like you see right here. And basically, they're associated with fertility. And what you'll see is that they allude in this article here that these women represented leaders of ancient matriarchal societies. And these ancient matriarchal societies will be the very place that the book of Enoch describes that these fallen ones exclusively taught their knowledge to these daughters of men, of which we know sprung what many people term these 13 bloodline Illuminati families. So I'm going to prepare a whole nother separate video series on these Venus figurines, and I have many more pictures to show you, and I'm going to be able to connect this directly to the Mount Hermon region and directly to the book of Enoch in a very unique way by showing you another picture of one of these statues, but you're just going to have to wait for that. But here's the ancient depictions that, at least at this point, they're showing you go back some 30,000 years, and you should begin to readily associate that with the dates that I've already given for the start date of Eden of 36,288 BC. And then we know that within the book of Genesis, the story of Eden, and then shortly after in Genesis 6, we get this depiction of these sons of God taken unto themselves the daughters of men. With this understanding here of how these original women of men are seen as the birthing cows that eventually develop into this goddess mentality of the sacred feminine, which birthed the 1001 depictions of Ishtar as this great white cow, all the way symbolized down to Revelation chapter 12, that is supposed to birth out this golden calf. Start coming back with basically a stream of information that will support and connect. I want you to see this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare this directly to Hosea, but considering everything that you've heard in connection with Zechariah 5, this woman being bared up in the wind, and then how it relates to REV.12 being bared up in the wind, and then we understand that it's about a birthing, a mother's womb, and this evilness that's supposed to be birthed out. I want you to listen to Ecclesiastes chapter 5. We're going to start reading at verse 13. There is a sore evil which I have seen under the sun, namely riches kept for the owners thereof to their hurt. But those riches perish by evil travail, and he begetteth a son, and there is nothing in his hand. Now this is the Antichrist. As he came forth of his mother's womb, remember Rev.12, Zechariah 5, naked shall he return to go as he came, and he shall take nothing of his labor. Remember the woman in travail, the woman in labor. With this labor, this great work, they're hoping to create this new world order. In other words, this golden age. He shall take nothing of his labor, which he may carry away in his hand. And this also is a sore evil, that in all points as he came, so shall he go. And what profit hath he that hath labored for the wind? Now the writer of Ecclesiastes is basically asking all of these people of fallen Israel, these mystery religions, what profit have you guys got for working for this laboreth of the wind? Now the laboreth of the wind that's being talked about is the same wind that's being bared up in Zechariah 5 and Rev.12, and you'll get a further displaying of it right here in Hosea chapter 8. I want you to show you right here, for they have sown the wind right below the calf of Samaria, which I'm telling you is who they're trying to birth and produce in this world. Samaria is the land of northern Israel. We know that northern Israel's colors are red and white, and I'm going to show you that this red and white are the two crowns that are upon Nekhbet and Wadjet, red and white. So listen to what Hosea says. Set the trumpet to thy mouth. He shall come as an eagle against the house of the Lord, because they have transgressed my covenant and trespassed against my law. Israel shall cry unto me, my God, we know thee. Israel hath cast off the thing that is good. The enemy shall pursue him. They have set up kings, but not by me. They have made princes, and I knew it not. Of their silver and their gold they have made them idols, that they may be cut off. Thy calf, O Samaria, hath cast thee off. Mine anger is kindled against them. How long will it be they attain to innocency? For from Israel was it also, the workman made it. Therefore it is not God, but the calf of Samaria shall be broken in pieces. For they have sown the wind. Sown is work. Sowing is labor. Sowing the fields is hard work. For they have sown the wind, and they shall reap the whirlwind. Listen to this, all about what they have created, all about what Israel, this league of United Nations, have created. They have been a workman. They have created this great work to break the great seal, to produce the supposed calf of Samaria, Inky, this golden calf, into our world, for they have sown the wind. As he came forth of his mother womb, naked shall he return to go as he came, and he shall take nothing of his labor which he may carry away in his hand. And this also is a sore evil, that in all points as he came, so shall he go. And what profit hath he that hath labored for the wind?